Giddy up! Welcome back to Dr. BeeWell. Today, as always, we have an extra special treat for everybody. This gentleman, he's an American cartoonist. He's the winner of an Eisner Award, which is the Academy Award of cartooning. He's written books that have impacted our culture, including Andre the Giant, Life and Legend, Cannabis, the Legalization of Weed in America, and the He-Man Effect, how American toy makers sold you your childhood. This man has been on the New York Times Bestseller List multiple times. He is an advocate for cannabis and in the utmost way. Currently, he is doing a series, Legalization Nation, which is a comic strip that's released every single week. It's an incredible comic strip that does advocate for the consumer, advocates for small businesses, advocates for the legalization of weed, talks about a lot of the BS. I'm so blessed, so lucky to have this gentleman on my show today. We welcome Brian Box Brown. What's up, Box?
Hey, that was such a great intro. I got to have you do all my intros.
Bro, I will do your intros from now on till the end of time because of what you are doing for cannabis, and for the way that you have really shepherded in kind of being a fun advocate, poking the bear, but doing it like in a fun way and doing it where people can kind of get behind and not have all these a lot of times when you have people who are doing what you do in advocacy positions and they're just going to the state house and they're talking to regulators and they're talking to newspapers and mainstream media, and it's a lot of times it gets lost. So to see someone who's doing it from such a creative perspective, I think because of that impacting more and more people, I think that not to more by the thousands and thousands of people you're impacting by doing it in the method that you're doing it and the means that you're doing it. So I have so much respect for you, man. I will always do your intros. It's so awesome to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, hell yeah. So yeah, it's a cool thing that you started off doing. You're a cartoonist. I think that's a really cool thing to have, to come into and to the graphic novels and all this. And so, just for our audience to kind of, let us know how did you become Box Brown? I drew comics like my whole life. As a kid, I was like a big reader of comic strips in the newspaper, and Calvin and Hobbes, and then I started reading X-Men and that type of stuff. I would always draw, and then I stopped all of my teenage years. I didn't draw a single line of anything. I quit art entirely because I don't know why. Really, I had some teenage adolescent angst thing where I was like, I'm not doing art anymore, and then I kind of got back into it in my 20s when I was in college. I started drawing cartoons in my notebooks when I was supposed to be paying attention, in class, and but I would just make little cartoons and show them to my friends and stuff like that. But I didn't really get into it seriously until probably 2005 or 6, when I discovered indie comics, because before that I didn't know that there was comics other than X-Men or Marvel comics or stuff like that. Right, yeah. And so when I found out that there was comics like Daniel Close and Charles Burns and James Kachalka and these cartoonists that would make comics about their real life, that's when I started making comics serious. And a lot of my early work was me doing autobiographical comics about myself, and at some point I moved on from that because I was like, I'm boring. There's not enough stories to and I started doing
it was like an easy move though from that to like historical or like nonfiction comics because it's, autobio is nonfiction also. Um, and so, and then I kind of was doing comics about all different stuff, religion and all kinds of things. But eventually I started making these comics about Andre the Giant. And that ended up becoming my first book, Andre the Giant, Life and Legend. And from there, I did a series of nonfiction books, Tetris, Andy Kaufman, cannabis, the He-Man Effect is the new one, which is about how deregulation of the children's media in the early 1980s has had long-lasting effects on like a generation of children or adults now. And it's so it's kind of about that.
Yeah, man, it seems like that's kind of like your focus is like, cartoonists I felt like were always people who were, pushing the button of like, they're like artists, but they're not artists who can, you think of like traditional artists, right? Like somebody who can just go out there and create art and necessarily isn't always connected to the real world because they're in a different reality. They're creating different realities. The cartoonists are always so, like within reality. They're all, because that's what a lot of their content is coming from, and a lot like their beauty and so it's like I haven't met many cartoonists, before this. It's just something that I have always respected because like I feel like if I was able to draw, that's something that I would like to do because it's something that you have to think about and you have to be witty. And I'm like, dude, you tell a whole story that some people would be incapable of telling in like an hour. You tell in a 6 to 8 strip comic, like that's
it's funny because it's funny because I'm really like explaining all the stuff to myself. Like it's me like putting my own thoughts like in order. And so like before I was doing the strips, I was like unable. I was just being mad, really. Like
Yeah.
I think this is like the feeling that a lot of people have. It's like you're mad, you're not exactly sure like who to be mad at or like what exactly is going on. And you're just like, why is it? I remember just being like, why? Like when I got my medical card here in Pennsylvania, and it was all, my cat.
Love it. Dexter?
Buster.
Buster. What's up, Buster?
And so I'd go in and it was all Cresco and Curaleaf or whatever, and a couple other brands here, PA. And I was like, all right, so this is legal, but like the weed that like I get from my buddy is not legal. Like it didn't really make sense. I think a lot of people are like strangely confused. That's like why a lot of you see like in New York, like as soon as they legalize weed, like people just open up shops and half the people are like, oh, weed's legal. Like, I guess this is how it goes. Like, and, people are not, people that support legal weed aren't fully informed about it because no one's really informing anybody. We have the way they cover weed in mainstream media, which is basically they mention how much money it's making. Then they mention maybe a celebrity that's has weed or is making weed money. Or they have like another story that's like making fun of a stoner, where it's like Matthew McConaughey smokes weed and plays the bongos naked or whatever like that.
Right.
And then you have also weed media, right? So there's weed media. But weed media, I felt wasn't exactly covering these issues either. And I was like, well, why? They're the weed media. Like, why isn't weed media, talking about the inequities in the market or anything at all, really, or explaining why? They're just saying it's happening, but it's obvious what's going on. And, I started to look at what are the big mainstream weed media outlets, and they're all pretty much funded by advertising for the big corporations as well. And so, I wasn't seeing exactly the media that I wanted to see, basically. And I was getting frustrated every day and trying to do these things, like trying to pass along, you know, serve, what's that called, where you send along, people sign a petition, right?
Yeah.
Pass along petitions and email. I remember I calling my representatives and all this stuff, and they would just I met with so many representatives and being like, they just kind of placate. They're just more annoying to talk to half the time than the corporate people. But so felt like I was getting nowhere and no one was listening, and that's when I was like, oh, I make comics. It's I could vent my frustrations in this way, and it was kind of like a diary strip at first, just like my old comics, like when I was just making autobiographical stuff, except for now I was just constantly in a state of frustration over the PA legal market, and then seeing, because we're on the East Coast here, and in PA and in Jersey, where I grew up, and I was living, in Jersey City, up in the York area for the longest time. California and Colorado legalized weed a long ass time ago, and I remember just being so jealous that they had it way back, and then watching it come across the country and it being like a mutated form of what they had on the West Coast was so frustrating, because I was sitting there watching it for like a decade and being like, please, open up next, down the street from me so I can just go buy weed.
Yeah.
And then it finally came, and it was nothing. It was like this mutated monster version. And yeah, and then that's what led to the creation of the strip.
Yeah, man, it's the creation of the strip came from your own struggle with the trying to just get, trying to get cannabis at in a respectable way.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, it's really just it's a frustration of being a consumer, basically.
Yeah.
And but then you end up becoming very involved,
With the advocacy.
Yeah, you become more than a consumer.
Yeah.
But I've always considered myself a consumer and patient advocate at heart, and because some stuff does come down. I also support small business and stuff like that, and there are certain things that I look at and I'm like, well, that wouldn't be, small business owner might not like that, but that's what's best for the patient and the consumer. So, you know what I mean? So I always try to fall on that side.
What ends up being best for the consumer?
Yeah.
And the patient. Yeah. I always try to, being a business owner myself, I try to always, be on that line, and that's like a tenet of, it's a core value of our company, because that, if you lose that, then you're not, you got into this because it is a way to, to make money, but I hope you got into this because it's a way to help people, and it's a better way to help people, and to either give them relaxation from an adult use standpoint, or, actual medicine from a medical standpoint. And the outcomes that we saw, and they're not even really that well documented, because it's a state by state thing. It's not federally legal. It was done differently everywhere. So we don't even really know the outcomes, but I know up here in Maine, how many lives have been changed because of cannabis, the addiction rates, all of the, everything, mental health, depression, anxiety, has all, improved. And it's.
Yeah. I also, a lot of times, I have, friends and relatives in my life that are older, of an older generation. They're getting up there, starting to get older now. And a lot of them, had been using alcohol really to relax for the longest time. And it was detrimental to their health. Really was. I think about people I know that are alcoholics now and drink every day to relax, and I'm like, I wish they would just would have been smoking weed.
Yeah, man.
Because I really feel like that it's itching that itch that they need to itch, and it would be coming with so much less complications. Like, and I do also I've seen a lot of benefit also from that generation too. People that have now, because it's legal in Jersey, a lot of my family and relatives are, able to just go do that, and they do. And they are receiving all this benefit from it now because it's so much more convenient and easy for them to get and ingest and things like that. The boomers generation is really benefiting, of course, benefiting the most from legal weed. I mean, like, they benefit the most from the corporate weed because they can afford the expensive weed. They don't care. They just want the convenience. It's kind of like made for them, which is sad because, like, it's at the expense of everybody else. But at the same time, I am seeing those boomers who are being catered to, again, experiencing a lot of, getting a lot of benefit from it.
Yeah, it's like, my family, they probably wouldn't go to, the traditional, cannabis dealer's house to, to grab an eighth or a half ounce. But they will go into the dispensary, and they will, do that, and they will, because they're being told that it's okay, that it's legal now.
Right, exactly.
And that is shitty, that it's just the messaging around that the fact that it's just legal. You talked about it like a lot in your book, like the reasons for the legalization of cannabis, the illegalization of cannabis, like in the first place. Yeah, just a bunch of horseshit. It
was just always garbage from the beginning.
Yeah, and it's like, that's so clear.
That was the thing for me that I don't think I fully understood before I did the book, was that, like, I think there's part of you that wants to go back and be like, oh, these people back in the day were acting, they were doing the best they could with the information that they had, and they weren't, acting in self-interest. That, they were doing the best they could. They thought that weed was dangerous because they had all these observations and things like that. And that's not really what happened. What happened was they were like, it's just like now, where they were like, oh, let's just make this illegal. Well, one dude basically, like, pushed it to, like, keep his job after they ended alcohol prohibition, and it also because of racism and fear of immigrants. And it's another reason they made it illegal. It has nothing to do with everything they told us about how it's dangerous or anything like that. Like, that was not at all part of the equation. That's what they said.
Exactly. It's going to make people go crazy, reefer madness. You're going to go insane.
But they were lying then, and they knew it.
Yeah, they did know it. Yeah, they knew it, and it was easier back then because they didn't, social media didn't exist, and so all the bad stuff about social media. Like, guess what? There is good stuff about it too. The fact that you can release a comic every Wednesday and, like, educate people about this, and we can have conversations about it and actually call people out and say, like, hey guys, this is what's really happening, and we should maybe take a look at it.
The media was largely controlled by the people with the money, by the Elon Musks of the day and the Jeff Bezos of the day, which is not dissimilar to what's happening now. But we also have DIY methods of getting information out there that were available at the time.
Yeah,
and so but the media manipulation, while it's still very powerful, held even more weight back then.
Yeah, I think it did hold more weight back then, and it's easier now. It's a little murky right now because, like, everyone, like, that's what I kind of want to ask you, like, do people do care, right? People do care, and, like, there can be change that could happen here, because I a lot of times is what I see is, like, we can make all this noise, and we can bring it to light and bring it to attention, and, like, anybody who has any semblance of any, like, any brain at all would, be able to look at what you're doing and say, like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And, like, maybe I have to look into it on the other side and see what's going on embedded on my own. But this doesn't seem like it's a good thing that's happening. it seems like it's a bad thing. But like to get actually people to organize and to think that way, and then to actually make change within like the legislator, like where only 40% of the people of the active population even goes to vote. It's really
extremely, extremely difficult. And there's even people, I think, that, and I see this all the time, where there's people that support the cause generally, but also don't like when people get complaint. They just see it like as complaining.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, shut up. This is so much better than like, whatever. When I had to buy weed, their argument is usually like, I had to go to the bad neighborhood to buy weed from a black person, basically.
Yeah.
And then now I could just go to the store. Or the people that are like, oh, but baby steps. It takes baby steps. That whole thing. And I think that, you have to remember that like no change happens at all with that extreme pressure from the people. Heavy pressure, as much pressure as you can put on politicians and on corporations at this point, because they're so powerful. Like no change happens without that pressure. At no point are they just going to decide to do things better if you don't stand up and say something. Keeping your mouth shut or telling other people who are willing to stand up to keep their mouths shut doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, that I also don't agree with that argument, like of people saying like, oh, baby steps, and it's a lot better than it was. Like, yeah, guys, guess what? Obviously, it's a lot better than it was. We're not arresting people for cannabis anymore. Like, we're
right.
In a lot of states. In a lot of states, we still are.
Yeah.
But like at least we're not. Yeah, at least we're not doing that. At least we're not putting people in jail for 20 to 25 years. For cannabis. Like, yeah, sure, that's good.
Yes, I know. We have to count our blessings. That's like the whole.
What was it, Jacob?
No one's free either. The ones who got arrested, they're still in jail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they're still in jail. No one's free. So like I think we have to do a lot of complaining, and especially when something is, there's literally a parallel right within our own society that that kills more people, that creates more death, creates more more addiction, more mental health issues. It's called alcohol. And we freely just have been doing that forever.
It's not just legal. It's like completely supported and encouraged.
Completely supported, encouraged, and regulated to the point where it's at the most benefit for the corporations who produce that alcohol, and for the representatives of our government who support those corporations. You said it. You said that they're both the same, corporations and government at this point. The way that I kind of look at it, there's not really any separate. They're not even a separate.
They're doing
entity.
it together.
Yeah, they're doing it together. Yeah, and the corporations are just a little bit smarter than the government most of the time, so they're getting a little bit more advantage, and then the government still ends up getting to get theirs, and of course it rolls downhill, and the people are taken advantage of, the masses, the most of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you look at like the way cannabis is legalized cannabis is coming down in a lot of states, it's trickled down legalization. They're giving the most benefit to the people with the most money, and hoping, or not even hoping, that it ends up benefiting the people below them, which we know doesn't work.
Yeah.
Instead of empowering the people at the bottom to build from the bottom up. And the states that are the most successful are the ones that have the lowest barrier to entry to business. And it's crazy to me, like that the same politicians will talk about barriers to entry and free market benefits in other areas, and then come to cannabis and be like, no, we need these barriers of entry to keep the bad people out. We need regulations. I mean, heavy regulations. There's no invisible hand to the free market. Like that doesn't do it. They forget that argument entirely when it comes to cannabis.
Yeah, they really do. It is a completely overregulated market right now, and it really just hurts small businesses. The barriers to entry is like the biggest thing, right? Like, so I'm a Massachusetts guy originally, and for me to get to start my business, I needed to move to Maine. to become resident there because Maine has a great program. Maine has a great medical program where the barriers to entry are very, very little. Anybody can start a business out of their home for under $1,000, you know, and it's likely if you do it right.
Ridiculous. Compare that to to open a business in Massachusetts, you need, for one thing, a commercial property right off the bat, right?
Yep.
Do you,
you need to show a certain amount of money that you have,
right?
In your
and you have liquid income, all that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Liquid income that you need to be able to show just to apply for these licenses. And then to your point, like they did it from a trickle down effect where they gave it to the people with the most money first, and that created a system where after 5 years they said, oh shit, we need to give some of these people some stake in the game, some equity, and they created all these social equity programs, and that could not have gone worse. You know, it's like you're so good at regulating all this other stuff, so why don't you actually regulate the program that you create, or create a good program and regulate it in the right way so that some of this social equity could become a real thing and not just be this manipulation thing that's happening everywhere across the country.
I always think that, like, you know, you're using more regulation to fix the problem of over-regulation. And really they need to take a hacksaw to the law. You know, I mean, the best social equity program would be one where, hey, all right, everybody else has to buy commercial property, but social equity applicants can work out of their home. There'd be a million social equity businesses. It'd start up right away, but always their response is that, oh, it cost $1 million to start a business. Oh, here's a bunch of ways to give poor people loans for millions of dollars, and that they end up paying more on or defaulting on, and all these things, instead of making it so they don't need a fucking $1 million to start the business.
Yeah. I bet some of the you know, why the medical market is so strong, and some of those medical players have gone into the adult use market over in Maine, but it's because of that, because they started from the beginning. They started as a person who just wanted to try to get into this, and they could get into it. And that's the whole thing, is like, you should be able to try to experience another industry, especially if it's a new industry, if you think that you can be somebody who brings a ton of value to it.
Right. You got to start somewhere. Like every business, I did a comic about this once, where, you know, if you look at like every business, including Microsoft, Apple, anybody, they all start their businesses from home. Everybody starts from home. Every small business, every large business, they all started at conversations at the kitchen table. They started from selling product out of their home, manufacturing product in your basement, things like that. In weed, they immediately take that away. There is no way. The first thing you got to do is purchase an enormous commercial property, or rent it from somebody that owns it outright, because, you know, there's the whole safe banking thing. And so now you're talking about exploitative rents, or, you know, $1 million in cash or even say it was $250,000 in cash. You'd still have to pay that outright without a loan to get started, to start. Like, there's just no bottom rung on the ladder.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because, and like, do you think it's because there was so much, like, you know, inflow of cash right in the beginning? You know, I know like every single company that ancillary business that they know that deals with cannabis companies, they're always looking for more money than they would be from normal industries. And I just wonder how this happened. You know, like why how did we get to this point so quickly where we can't, you know, where you know,
ultimately, I think, like, the thing that drives all of this is stigma against the cannabis plant. So, the places that are exploiting small businesses, they're doing it because they're trying to sell weed, and they know the people that are exploiting them know that no one's going to let them sell weed. People don't want weed near them. So if they're the people that are going to be selling them the property, that they can charge them a lot of money, because it's like the weed tax they put on top, the stigma tax, basically. is on everything. And that's all because people are not, cool with weed, because we spent 100 years telling people that smoke weed are bad, weed's bad. That's the big thing, is that not just that weed's bad. I think like a lot of people can get over the fact they can be, this type of person exists. The person that says, weed isn't bad. I think it should be legal, whatever. But the people that smoke weed are fucking scumbags. They smoke too much weed. They smell like weed. They're stupid. They, any number of things. And then that type of thing still goes on. And that's stigma. That's the thing that exists like in people's hearts. That,
And no, I mean, it really does. Like people, me, I would consider myself, and I would consider you, pretty high functioning people. I'm married. I have a kid. I run a business. I run a couple of businesses. I do this podcast. I do it all successfully. I have a big social life. And like, yeah, man, I engage in cannabis. And it's like when people talk to me, they're like, they like people who are of that mindset, they still think it's like I am, putting myself in a place where I'm making myself stupider, or I'm making myself like slower, or like.
But imagine what you could do if you didn't smoke weed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, exactly, dude. If I didn't smoke weed, I'd be a lot sicker than I am now. That's a big fact. Yeah, that's a
I'd
big
be
fact.
more stressed. I'd be stressed to the max, like out of my mind.
Yeah.
I'd be doing some other crazy shit.
No, exactly right. Exactly. That's what you get worried about. It is like, and it's never a substitute for me, but I do have that background. I do have that background of mental health and going towards substances and stuff. And, I have so many friends who have cut out alcohol from their lives, and they have substituted it, 1-for-1 for cannabis, and it's been very successful. Their lives have gotten a lot better, and
you're substituting a less dangerous thing, a more dangerous thing for a less dangerous thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Less dangerous thing.
It's like when people are a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts, after they get clean, end up getting into sweets and sugar and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, right.
Even though everybody's like, but sweets are bad for you. It's like, yeah, but alcohol is far, far worse. Like,
yeah.
And the mental health thing for me is important part of my cannabis story, because I use it for my mental health in many cases. I have debilitating anxiety, and cannabis helps me with that. People are like, "Oh, doesn't it make you more paranoid?" Like, no, it helps me like be able to leave the house and things like that. And the other thing is that it helps me focus. I have really bad ADHD.
Yeah.
And for me, drawing comics, like smoking weed and drawing comics, and just being able to focus just on that activity for hours. It's like one of the only things I can do like that. It's a huge benefit to me, and I feel like cannabis like absolutely helps with that. And so it's so important to me that that's why I think that, like, people see it sometimes as such a negative thing, and I'm like, this is the thing that helps me the most of all these other things going on in my life. Like, this helps me get through life.
Yeah, man, it helps me get through life, and that's what people, helps you get through life, and that's like what a lot of people like. You want to be able to find other tools that can help you with that stuff as well, and there's more of them out there for sure. But in this day and age, where we're expected to, we have all these other problems, right, like high blood pressure and and cholesterol and diabetes and all this stuff, and we're expected to fix those immediately by taking a pill and getting something that's immediately going to help us, and then we can do the longer term stuff of going to the gym and eating healthier, and sure, all that stuff's going to help with the anxiety too, but something that in real time can help you process that, help you with your focus. I don't see how that's, and it's not negatively affecting your life. It doesn't bring negatives to your life. And that's what I say to everybody is, like, with a lot of these substances, with cannabis, with some of the other stuff that's coming around now, psilocybin, MDMA, it's a personal relationship that you have with these substances, and that's really what what the medicine is, and figuring out what that is. And for you, it helps you focus, and it helps you have less anxiety, and that's a great thing. That's an awesome thing. And most people who have similar afflictions with anxiety and stuff, they might do a ton of booze or take a ton of amphetamines, and cannabis is definitely better than those two things. But like even as a non-replacement, like I think it can just really it can add to your life. It likely adds to the the creativity that you're doing and stuff as well. Like it's just part of the process.
I mean, listen to it. Go to a concert on weed. I mean, like truly, like go to movies and things like that. Like I can't. I could go on a lot extolling the virtues of cannabis forever. It's something I love. You know what I mean? And I love like the diversity of the plant. I love how it can do so many different things. I love how it can smell so many different ways and like have so many different types of effects and flavors, and
yeah, you can put it everywhere. It's like for me, man, with the plant, I like to smoke it, sure, and I like to eat it, and that's great. The psychoactive effects, those really help me for sure. But like what I really love is I really love to put it on my body. I love to put it on my hair. I love to put it on my skin. I love to create salves and different creams and stuff that I think that are benefiting me in ways that are pain relief. Topical THC, topical CBD is an incredible thing. And like talk about like anti-anxiety, like we have a non-psychoactive part of the plant, part of hemp, and that is CBD. And that tons of other stuff that we're learning now too, CBG, CBN, all these stuff that can be very helpful. And we have people who can cultivate a plant that has no THC in it, very very little, and even that people aren't even in a lot of states aren't even able to engage in, and that stuff really does help with anxiety. That's a super good substance to CBD to help with anxiety, and like it's just crazy that people in some states can't even get that.
Yeah, I mean, I took CBG one time, and I gave me such like a wonderful feeling of as it changed my entire mood in one dose. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's CBN too. Like, there's so many people that have difficulty sleeping, and then like here's CBN, like literally, like it's the thing that makes you tired when you smoke weed. It's like you can just take just the thing; it'll make you very tired.
Yeah.
When you smoke a lot of weed, and you get tired. That
yeah, use that. Do that one. Yeah, I do. I think that's just it's so great, and just talking about your comics, like so you're always smoking for these, and you're always getting engaging and partaking when you're doing your work. I think that's a really cool thing. I think it's really cool that you're honest about that with with people. That is the case.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool, man, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too is that like doing the comic has allowed me to get to know so many other people in the cannabis space that are doing.
Well, that's what I wanted to end this. Yeah, I wanted to ask that, man. Like you're plugged in. You're very very plugged into what's going on, and I'm kind of curious as to how you get your your information. Do you know people? Do you have a network of people? Are you following a website?
Yeah.
You usually release stuff pretty early and are ahead of the game.
I am just like on the pulse like constantly, but also I do have people that send me things all the time. There's like a large number of workers, I would say, a lot of workers that are disgruntled and have seen a lot of stuff, and they'll send me stuff all the time. Things, pictures from grows and things that just look terrible, complaints about a lot of different things. But then further up the chain too, you have people that are like consultants and things like that, people that work in marketing and end up seeing the ugly side of stuff as well. Often will contact me. I mean, I have I reach out to a lot of people. If I see some part of a story that I'm interested in, I'll reach right out to the people. A lot of the stuff is from interviews. But honestly, like a lot of people are all very willing to send stuff to me. I think people often get a kick out of being like in a comic, for one thing, if they end up being in the strip. But also, like, there's not a lot of resources for people out there that have stories about troubles in the industry, and there's not many places for them to go to talk about this stuff and to have, get restitution on it. So airing it in public, I think is a way to kind of like get a little bit back when you're screwed over.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm curious. The names that in your comics, are those real people's names that you're referencing? I know, like, for instance, the one that you dropped most recently about Lorna McMurray.
Oh yeah, that's a real person.
That's a real person, of course. And for people who don't know that story, it was a young person who was working in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's in Massachusetts.
Oh, in Massachusetts, exactly. It's Massachusetts, exactly right. It's Massachusetts.
Holyoke,
exactly. It was in Holyoke, exactly. It was in Holyoke, Massachusetts. It was True Leave, and kept telling her, the bosses that, hey, I'm not feeling well. I need to go. I think went to the hospital a few times even, and then died.
Yeah, and she ended up dying. She went into cardiac arrest at work, and never regained consciousness. Died 3 days later. And she was 27, which is absolutely tragic. I mean, think about like what we're talking about here. She was grinding weed. It's not. I start thinking about the industrialization of weed like that, and I know there's always going to be need to get more faster, and all this stuff. But one, do we need weed grinders that can grind 20 pounds of weed in an hour? Like, are you really selling this many pre-rolls that you need this much weed ground all the time? Maybe, maybe not. But again, this is supposed to be a regulated industry, right?
Yeah.
And there are no processes that are regulated. So like in Canada, right? Health Canada, went in and looked at all the different processes for the different products that you can make with weed, and they have standard operating procedure for all of this stuff. So if you are going to grind weed in Canada, it has to be cleaned X amount of days, X amount of hours, after use, in this particular way, at this much ventilation, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't exist in America. There's the processes, even though we're a heavily regulated industry, something that costs, all the stuff that costs a lot of money, keeps people out of the industry. The stuff that we need to be regulated is often under-regulated. And so the processes like this, which would have put a legal standard in place that they have to keep this room clean and have exhaust fans running X amount of hours per day or whatever, and et cetera, use this machine properly. That doesn't exist. And then you end up in a place where the room itself is dangerous to this person, and they're asking to be moved and clearly having problems with medical health problems, and it's being ignored by its staff. And then you have something like this. Listen, no one should ever die in the production of cannabis products. They shouldn't even be in danger, because this is a totally benign substance that does not need to be automated and grown and produced by the trillions and trillions of pounds. Weed ground up in these machines and rolled by machines. Not necessarily the best weed, not necessarily the product to be putting in these things, not necessarily the best smokability. I mean, sometimes you get a pre-roll and it's immediately canoes the whole entire thing.
Let me ask you, do you feel the same way about like, about concentrates and stuff? Like, because a lot of those are super processed and have, pretty dangerous material that's being used. And if you're not, educated about it, you could easily die.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean in the creation of concentrates?
Yeah, in the creation, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, when they were making BHO and stuff in people's houses, there was a lot of houses getting blown up.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, I'm thrilled.
A larger question, because I do agree with what you're saying, but it's like that with every capitalistic business, the model is to try to to use create as much as you can and create such a back end system where you are creating profit. And maybe we don't need it to this size, and maybe we do have some type of regulation where it's protecting the employees like they do in Canada. If that's the case. And I don't know if it's, because like I said, I think concentrates are a pretty cool thing that's being invented. It's been all this new stuff.
It's safer to be made
in a commercial facility for sure, and to teaching people that way. And to have access to this stuff is pretty cool, but it's like, it's where do we draw the line and how do we draw the line?
And that's another product that really needs like regulated processes.
Yeah.
Where, you can look at it and be like, this is the proper way to do it. Don't, whatever, release the gas. I mean, I'm not exactly even sure how all that stuff works.
Right. And I'm not expecting you to be, but I agree with what you're saying, that like people should know how this works so that the consumer is getting the best product. And it's as simple as like, you don't have to regulate it to, know every single track, every single bit. You just need to have, teach the people how to do it and make sure a process that exists that's right. And then have, some type of standard, and then have checkups and have people come in and have honest checkups and have the,
That's what I always say too, like about how restaurants work. Like someone comes in randomly and checks the stuff. Yeah. And that's just test the weed that way. Like have people randomly come in, random spot checks. It's like how everything works.
And like the food industry is another one though too, man, where it's like we say we're the safest food in the world and we have the safest food because we're the most regulated industry, and it's like that's actually not really true. We do have a lot of bad stuff in our food. We just don't hear about it.
We're like the best product comes from knowing your farmer. And like going to small farms and knowing who you're getting your stuff from. But that's why the weed market needs those small farms. It has to be inclusive of the small farm and the small business person, and because like that's actually low key like the safest weed, really. I mean, like knowing who you're getting your weed from and who they're getting it from, or who's growing it and what they're putting in the soil, and or if they're growing it in soil at all of these things is like information you need to know. That it's always the most beneficial way is by buying it directly at a farmer's market or like from the farmer, or as close as you can to that.
Yeah. So I agree with you. The people who would disagree with us would say that, okay, but those people are, and it's kind of, this will be a good segue into the Maine medical market and the California medical market versus the PA medical market. But, people would say those people who are just, growing it in their house and being the farmers or being the local farmers doing it outside, well, how do we regulate them? How do we know that they're doing it right? How do we know that they're not using all these bullshit chemicals, or they're using a different, thing that's making it so that they can increase their yield? And that's like that's really what the corporations are trying to do and trying to control that, when we should just be able to trust our community and trust our neighbors and trust the medical program in Maine is great because you have the ability to test. And most stores that are successful are doing that. They're not doing some crazy program where they have to track every single bit of every, from seed to sale and that they're doing this, but they're testing their cannabis and you can absolutely get that test result. And that
you can totally do it if you want to.
You can totally do it if you want to.
Or, if you are cool with buying this, I always get this weed. I don't care what the test says. Like, you don't have to worry about that. Also, like, I mean, I guess people want to know things like, and this is what we see in Pennsylvania and a lot of different places. The only actual information on the box is like how much THC is in it and how much CBD is in it and that type of thing, which, in my opinion, isn't really safety information. It's like value information.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue that, like, if it's high THC, it's safe to know that in the way that, I don't know, that you want to know that if your beer is high alcohol content or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
In my
a 3% beer and a 12% beer is different than a 26% THC and a 32% THC.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
12% beer is going to send you off the fucking moon.
Exactly. And a 14% THC that is right for you might make you more fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, very true.
It's almost unnecessarily whatever.
Yep.
So, but when I think about safety information, what I think about is, in Colorado, they have a list of every input that goes into the plant has to be on the label. So if whatever they're putting into that plant, you know, that to me is safety information. You know,
So so explain that a little bit further though. So like that means they're telling you the soil that they're using, they're telling you the any chemical that
the nutrients, yes, anything they're using as for you know, to keep the bugs away or anything like that. All that stuff goes on the label.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's like really good safety information. And I think, you know, when if all this weed's being tested also for heavy metals and
Pesticides,
fungus, all that stuff, like
mold.
I think all of that information and the actual numbers need to go on the box also. You know, not pass fail, but this is the actual score of this product's fungus test or whatever it is. So you can look at it, be like, oh, all these numbers are pass. They pass. All the numbers pass, but you can look at one and be like, all right, well, this passed with 9,999 cubic, whatever it is, of mold, and this one has 10. And so you can make that decision and be like, oh, okay, well, that passed, but it's really close to the number. It almost didn't pass. This one completely passed. You know, you can make better informed decisions by seeing literally what every food product that you ingest has on it, which is like a list of ingredients on the side of the box.
Yeah, but let me ask you this: when you go pick up your local Heineken, you know, are you seeing that's how that's tested and the heavy metals in that and the
Nope.
I'm sure that's the same thing.
Yeah, no, you don't see any of that stuff. Yeah.
I kind of would like to, and I think maybe too, like, you know, it'd be cool, you know, maybe you've already done one, but like unveiling looking up the regulations within the, within alcohol and how they are just like, you know, how are they subverting that, you know, like, cause are they testing that, you know, I mean, it's a different medium. So like some stuff won't be able to exist in it. I understand that because it is alcohol. So like mold and stuff like that would be hard to grow and stuff, but like you still have all this stuff that you're taking from barley, that you're taking from wheat and rye and all this stuff that you're processing and all this other stuff that they're putting in all these beers now, pineapple and watermelon, whatever, you know, air honey, everything, you know? So like to see what that, you know, to see what kind of testing is done on that stuff as well. Like, I think that would be, you know, good because we like with food, for instance, like within Colorado, like with food, you know, through FDA, you can have stuff on the label, right? You can have stuff on the label. It might say organic mangoes, but then the next thing you know that like, oh, this was actually, when this was processed, it was covered in a sulfur bath before it was put into the dehydrator. And then this means that there's probably remnants of sulfur all over this. And so like there's different, they call them processing agents. And like, you know, a lot of people are always contacting me and trying to get me to do my honey in a different way and being like, oh no, you don't even have to put it on the label. And I'm like, well, that's the last thing that I'd ever want to hear, like that to doing that to a consumer, that it's something that we can do that likely probably isn't great, that we don't have to end up putting on the label. You know, so like these processing agents that they have, you know, that exist. And like, obviously some of that stuff like is, you know, butane, BHO and propane and different stuff that we use in, you know, in cannabis extraction. but it's like with food, it's directly right there. It's then we put that food sometimes into alcohol, and so it's just like I think it is overregulated, and like figuring out a way to figure out why it's overregulated and realizing that it's probably because of these big
really,
corporations.
all this stuff is just to make people feel safe. I mean, like, it's less about, I think, this might sound bad, but it's less kind of about actual safety and more about the feeling of safety.
Yeah.
The American security pageantry. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's security theater.
Yeah, it's all theater.
Yeah.
It's all,
Yeah.
You feel safe. It doesn't actually protect you.
Yeah, like the food. We say we have the safest food in the country, and like, because you never hear about all these outbreaks that we do have of salmonella and listeria and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, well, why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't this brought to our attention? No, it's just we have the safest food because we do it in this way. We have everything's cold and everything's pre-packaged, and really that's just an excuse for it to give us worse food so that the companies can make more money.
Yes.
So to see it in cannabis and is disheartening. I think that people like you are making a difference. And I think so, dude. Like, I know you shrugged there, but like you are, you're bringing attention to it. And do you get negative feedback from people?
Oh, yeah. Usually like a couple people per every time I post a comic, there's somebody that's like mad about something.
Is it pro-corporation people, pro-government people, or just people who are getting further into the weeds of what you're trying to talk about and letting you know that, like, hey, Box, you could be explaining this a little bit better?
So there's a little bit of that. There's all three of those things, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of that type of stuff. There's people that are mad because, some minor point didn't get made. Explaining something further. There's always somebody mad, always somebody defending the corporate side, for sure. There's always at least one person doing that. And yeah, I think that's fun. To me, that's like part of the hilariousness of the thing. But also, it's sad and funny to me. That it's more sad than it is funny, but it's kind of funny. Is that half the time there will be two cannabis advocates, like both people are into cannabis, like advocacy, and they'll have like a 40 comment fight in the comment section of like strip about something, just going back and forth. And like I'll just get it like every few hours. So I'm like, oh, fuck you, this whole thing in my. Also, like sometimes like people get. Like a lot of times I'll just like, well, because I get so many comments, I just like go in and try to hit like on all of them because like it helps the algorithm like see the comic strip more or whatever it is.
Yeah, you got to do it. It sucks, but we got to do it, right?
Yeah, and so sometimes I'm like not even fully reading them all because there's just like so many. Like, and then at least once, maybe more than once, there's been somebody being like, "You like that?" Like. And it's like, how could you like that comment? And then like, definitely one person like blocked me and left entirely because I hit like on a comment where they were like in a fight.
This fake motherfucker out here trying to give comic strips and trying to let people tell him I know, and he's not doing this the right way, and now he's liking this cocksucking comment. Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but this is all just so like I've been putting comics on the internet for a really long time, and like. It's always been people pissed off in the comment sections. It's just like there's no way to post anything on the internet without like a small percentage of people getting very mad about it.
Yeah, it's good that you have that attitude about it, I think, because like that's a good attitude. I'm putting a lot of stuff out there right now, and I get some negative feedback. I get some people telling me that to say things in a certain way, and that my opinion that isn't valid or whatever, and it's like maybe my opinion isn't valid. Like, come into the studio and let's have a conversation about it. Let's have a long form, nuanced conversation about it, and let's figure it out. And if you don't want to do that on air, we can do it in my house too. So, like, I'm always. What was that?
People are just people are pissed off and like get pissed off very quickly. It's been like when I was first getting started posting comics, it would bum me out, for like the whole day, if I got like somebody being a hater or whatever. And then, after a million years of that, I stopped like getting really pissed off about it. Or sometimes I do get pissed off, but I'm like, I know they're just trying to piss me off. And
Yeah.
so I try to ignore it. But I'm just as guilty as anybody else of being like, some people follow you, you know,
Yeah, dude, it's where we're at right now,
you just can't help it. I mean, like, just people are so rude and sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it comes down to is like what I'm trying to tell people too is just like we need to give one another the grace to be able to hear what the other person has to say, not have our minds like fully made up and go from there. Like that, the only way is through. And like you can't just say, hey, I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, fuck off, we're never gonna agree. It's like, yeah, well, maybe we might not agree, but like let's figure out why we don't agree first before we decide that we're never gonna talk again, or I'm gonna block you, or I'm gonna. And it's like, dude, with the online, like social media, like it's very tough to have conversations, and I know this now more than ever because when I get people into the studio and I have these conversations, and they have to be focused to keep up with me. They have to be focused on the conversation and what's going on, and just to be here. They're not looking on their phone. Like the way that we feel afterwards is always an amazing thing, and it's always like a benefit. But it's like if I wasn't doing this, it might not happen. This stuff isn't happening, and it should be happening just out there. And when people are,
right, it's not a natural matter, of course.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
It's. I feel like there's some platforms that are better than others. Like if you look at like a Discord or something like that, a lot of times stuff like that, for some reason, people feel like they can explain their piece a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it's. I often watch really old episodes of Donahue, which was like the original talk show format,
Okay.
And at the end of those, they have the crowd ask questions, and when the crowd asks questions at the end of Donahue, it's exactly like the comment section of like every website you've ever been to, but it's just people standing there because what happens is they get up there, they get the microphone, and they're like, yeah, like that dude needs to shut up, blah, blah, blah. Don't you guys think this is so-and-so? And like they make it clear they didn't pay attention to the entire show. They're just, saying their preconceived notions and being rude or entitled on purpose. And it's just so funny seeing people actually read it, say it themselves instead of typing it. But it's no different. I mean,
this is an old show, Donahue. I'm not familiar.
Donahue. Oh yeah, Donahue was like, there was like the talk show format like Oprah.
Yeah.
Where it would be, they were like Jerry Springer.
Okay, yeah.
Donahue is the guy that like invented that, and like, so if you ever watch the show, it's like Jerry Springer, but like serious, like not
right.
But it does end up being like, like Geraldo, like all that stuff started with this guy Donahue, who is actually great. And all those old shows are amazing. They're all, not all, but a lot of them are on YouTube. I like love them. But the the ending questions are just like a comment section.
Yeah, so we haven't really evolved too much. We're still
like
the same.
Early 80s, yeah, not really different.
Yeah, and I do feel that way, that we are like, we're always going to be that way. People have their tribes and they have their opinions, and it's like it's what keeps us safe. It's very entwined into your nervous system. But like I know that I've changed a ton of my opinions in my life, and I continuously grow. So I do know it's possible. And not to say that I'm not staunchy on some opinions and have in a heart in some ways, because I am, but I'm always willing to listen. And like people right now, I think because we are dealing with this boom in technology, I don't think that that's always the case. They're not able to listen. The media and stuff, these big corporations have realized that there's benefit for them to not have us, connecting and communicating about this stuff, and for people to think one certain way, opposed to thinking like, hey, it's just great to have conversations within your community to figure out what's actually going on, so that you can control the type of cannabis that's being, coming into your state and the way that it's coming in. And if you don't care about it too much, well, that's okay, but it's still going to affect you. So you should still, have some type of say or thought at least on it, and have a conversation about it.
Yeah. I just think also it's good for there to be an opposing voice, quite like no matter what. Even if I feel like it's kind of like what I do a lot because like even, you know, uh, I kind of am at the point where I like want to argue against any kind of restrictions on cannabis at all because people will say something reasonable, like, how about if we do this? And I'm like, well, why? I mean, like, maybe, but let's think about why. Is it just because you think cannabis is bad or cannabis users are bad and that we're protecting them from that? Or is there some real danger here? Um, Even if it's like a benign thing, I always like to question that. Like, is it there just because of stigma? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Is stigma what's driving this? Are the corporations and are the major players using stigma to help
using stigma.
craft this way because they know it's going to be effective? Like also too, they see what happens in other states and they're able to kind of, a lot of these are, they operate in multiple states and they obviously have the resources to have an understanding of what's happening in each state.
Yes.
So like kind of figuring out like, oh, this already has happened here, so let's try to
Right. And the state by state thing, it keeps all the people separated. So like there's not, I mean, there are national cannabis organizations, but we're all fighting like 50 different fights. Instead of one fight. We're separated all throughout the country. Meanwhile, the people we're up against are the same throughout the country. Curaleaf is the same company that people in 50 different states are fighting against, but they have access to all the information and everything. And so it's like this divide and conquer thing, and it works, because like people, even though all these state markets are somewhat similar, they're also somewhat different, and so it ends up people are fighting all different types of fights, and it ends up being a lot of distraction from these tiny little battles that we're fighting. End up becoming a distraction from the main issue, which is that this whole thing has been fucked up. Like the whole thing
from the get-go, from a legalization, post,
yeah,
okay,
yes. I mean, like, we have to go back so far, and to. I just feel like in some cases it's better to start over than to keep putting band-aids on a broken system.
Yeah. How would you propose we start over? Federal legalization, just go.
I think in some ways, yeah. I mean, I feel like regulations should come from issues that pop up.
Yeah.
It should say, this is happening, everything's going swimmingly. Oh, here's a problem. Let's fix this with regulation. Maybe.
Let's talk about figuring out this with the regulation.
Yeah, like why is this happening?
Why?
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Happening?
Instead of predicting what all the problems might be, and then let it happen. Like, I mean, I think if you look at like in Canada, right? Like they went through legalization. They're years ahead of us. They did federal legalization. And in a lot of places, like in New York, like say you look at New York, and there's all these illegal dispensaries everywhere. Toronto had the same thing. They still have the same problem. There's legal dispensaries and illegal dispensaries. And, most effective methods that they took, and it wasn't as effective in Toronto as it was in like Vancouver, was that they went to the illegal dispensaries. We reached out to them instead of sending the cops there and giving them $10,000 in fines every day. They went there and said, hey, if you guys shut down, follow these particular standards, we're going to waive this standard and waive this standard and waive this standard because we know that it's outrageous. Or we're going to let, so you guys can just stay in this building, stay where you are, close now, reopen with legal products. Like they reached out to them and said, we'll bring you into the legal market rather than, you're out until you can go over these ridiculous hurdles. They ended up having to do outreach
Were a lot of those successful in? Do you know if a lot of those were successful in making that transition from being
I think
illicit
that
to illegal?
that some were obviously. I know when I talk about the Toronto thing that people are always like, well, it didn't work as well in Toronto, but in Vancouver, a lot of the those illegal dispensaries did end up becoming legal dispensaries. And really, that's what's gonna when we talk about people always talk about we want to destroy the illegal market and the illicit market and things like that. Nothing's gonna destroy that. The only thing you can do is help those people get legal and bring them into the fold and make it suitable for them. Not to force them, because if you're forcing them to do something that they don't want to do, they're just not going to do it. And then the illegal market's always going to be there. You have to.
They'll find a different way.
Yeah. If you really want to bring everybody into the legal market, you have to actually cater to the people that you want to bring into the illegal market, and not call them criminals and be like, no, those are all organized crime and things like that. Like, no, I mean, a lot of these people are just independent small business owners that sell weed because they know the product and they know the customers, etc. Some places that want to sell weed have been a head shop for 20 something years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know their customer base.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we forcing them to shut down so a big corporation can open up right next door to them? Like, let the big corporation open up right next door to them and just compete. Why do they have to be pushed out via statute?
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I do think that, like, what about like the cost that the legal operator had to pay to get into the market, versus like, license, you're going to make to get to the illegal operator.
No, listen, you're talking about putting a Band-Aid on a problem that needs to be removed anyway.
Yeah.
What we really need to do is lower those costs to entry and get that original person back the money that they put in.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
What I'm saying?
Yep.
We're not trying to then give extra money to the people. The problem was the problem was bad from the start. They're throwing bad money, good money after bad in those situations.
Yeah.
Instead of fixing the problem, they're just throwing more and more money at a problem that's money based. Like, you got to fix it.
Yeah.
Maybe you pay back those people that overpaid. Maybe you give them tax breaks.
Yeah, right. You take the revenue that you're now getting from the illegal shop and you just give it to the other shop, because you're, whatever, you figured out, you pay them back with the money that the revenue that this shop is now going to bring.
They don't, if they're suffering under tons of debt. Oh, maybe there's grants for people that are suffering under debt instead of just grants for people to get the money to get into more debt in the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It is. Yeah, I do. I definitely do. I think it's a very complex problem, and I don't know enough about Canada to be educated enough to like say the comparisons. But from what I'm hearing, you're telling me that like the cannabis market in Canada is a lot better than it is here.
Man, they have their own problems too.
Okay.
So they have all kinds of issues in Canada as well. I mean, they have state by state issues, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, they have other things that are good. I mean, like, there's mail order cannabis in Canada. You can get your shit delivered to your house.
Yeah, that's good.
Things like that. But there's also heavy regulation in Canada. Like, the marketing of cannabis is heavily regulated there. You can't have packaging like that, like this. Like, so this is like a dab packaging, right? There's all like pictures and stuff on it. There, everything just comes like a prescription package where there's no packaging. It's just like a blank.
So there's not really brands. It's more like retail operators who do well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can have a brand. You can have like your logo on there, but you can't market the product in any way. Wow. So there's problems there too. There's a lot of people that say that they're allowable. They over regulated the labs to the point where all the flowers like so dry in the legal market because weed is like a semi-moist herb, not a dry herb, semi-moist. Well, so there's always going to be some kind of mold content. Um, and so, but they made those allow percentages so low that the weed has to be dried out almost entirely before you even get it. And so that type of stuff is problematic as well.
See, that's the whole thing. It's like if you start testing the mold, and then you start, you start testing the mold, so then the mold is too much and the weed gets too dry. There's so many. It's really so complex. It really is. And I don't envy the lawmakers. I don't envy the people who have to go through this. I do think that they just are a lot of times self-serving and just going to their own benefit. But I just don't see, like, there was such a good thing going here in Maine for such a long time. With the caregiver program, with the medical program, it was very easy barriers to entry. You could provide medicine for your, for your friends and family with a medical card. For a long time, you didn't even need that medical card. That was kind of like a new thing, newish thing that likely probably should have been being done, according to like regulation, but it wasn't, and it was just okay. But like these operators, they're not trying to, maybe now because they're getting beat up by the adult use place, so they're trying to look for ways to, and that's the whole thing is all it's going to do is create worse product because the medical people are going to try to compete with the adult use people. And so like in Colorado, in California, you said it was the same type of deal, right? They had the caregiver program and the medical program. They had been established
The
earlier.
program was a lot easier to access.
Yeah.
The top 2 and 5 businesses, and a lot of businesses didn't survive the transition.
Yeah, when they did that in California, when they made it, so they made them go to the metric system, and they made them start to track and trace.
I don't know if they were doing track and trace in California in 215, but whatever it was that they made those changes, all the taxes and whatever it was that the way that they're deciding to change the regulation of cannabis from 215 to 64, people couldn't keep up with those regulations.
Are those the bills that you're referring to? 215.
Yeah, 215 was the original medical cannabis bill, and Prop 64 was the
Prop
new
64, the new one.
Yeah, and it's weird because in California, in other states, it's not really like this, right? So like, when you're starting from scratch, like in Massachusetts, let's say, they already have all those things into the law. So there's not a bunch of businesses going out of business. They just never were able to open in the first place. And so it's only in states like California and what would happen in Maine, where you can actually look at the data and be like, look, this type of regulatory system allowed for X amount of businesses, and this one chopped that number in half or less. And you can just look at the blood on the page. Whereas in states like Massachusetts, New Jersey, let's say, you can't be like, look at all these businesses that never opened, because they never opened.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Maine, the caregivers in Maine, that number keeps dwindling and dropping. Like, and they haven't even really made like the big changes yet. They haven't really, they've kind of just propped up the adult use a little bit more. And, and that is that likely because, from my point of view, that's likely because the adult use people have so much money into this. So, and they have resources, and a lot of them are multi MSOs.
Oh, yeah.
And have
they don't want the competition.
Yeah, so they're doing everything that they can to regulate these people out of it. They're going to fight to make sure that the medical people don't have the space. And we have a couple like adult use people on the show, and we've had medical people on the show, and we always talk about it like, and the adult use people always say like, oh, we just don't, we don't want them to have a medical card. They shouldn't have to be tracked and all this stuff. And then the testing thing is their other argument. Like, we fully test, but the medical card thing is something that people need access to get the medical program. When in adult use, you only need to be 21. And that's like because there's higher doses in medical, and
right. It's just like a little goofy like piece of, because like you can get the medical card. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's pretty easy to get a medical card.
Yeah, no one's gonna get denied. It's super easy.
Yeah, it's just a pain in the ass.
A pain in the ass. You get tracked as of like, before last year, you weren't able to be a gun owner because, that was, but they just voted that was unconstitutional. So you are able to be that. And
there's not a lot of protection for that information either, because it's not covered by HIPAA.
Yeah, right. It's not covered by HIPAA, so there's not you're knowing the state, you're signing your medical card, and they're knowing how much cannabis you're buying. They know how much, and that why. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
They
necessary.
could also use that information. They could have proprietary use of that information. Really,
You're saying the state?
state could, or they could sell that information.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, they could. Exactly right. That's proprietary information that they could sell, that they have access to, and I didn't even think of that. But it's
Yeah. Like in Jersey, that was the case too. Like you're having all these medical cards and everything, people signing up to a medical program that's not protected by HIPAA. So like now everybody, so there's like companies that set up people's medical cards, right? And so they serve X amount of customers per day for however many years. Now they have a customer list of people that got medical cards through them. They have that data. They can do whatever they want with it
yeah.
because it's not HIPAA data.
Yeah, which is another whole thing, getting this to be, a properly, I don't know the federal, I know recently they tried to deschedule it from 1 to 3, and that's, that
That's
seems,
what they want to do. Yeah.
that seems like a bunch of horseshit.
I mean, it's not going to change that much. I mean, like it's literally like the least possible
right. That's how I feel.
change they could have made. I mean, I guess they could have made it schedule too. Would have been even less, but
Yeah.
it really needs to be. First of all, I've said this many times that the entire scheduling system should be dismantled from top to bottom because it was admittedly created to target Black people. Nixon's people have admitted to that when they were creating the Controlled Substances Act, that it was made to target Black people and hippies. That's why you see cannabis Schedule 1. That's why it was like that.
Yeah.
And so if we're admitting that this whole system was
Same with
created,
psychedelics.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, same thing with psychedelics. They got to start over, man. They have to change the entire scheduling system and how it works, and have new whatever that's called.
Do you want to keep the scheduling and you're saying and just reschedule the drugs, all the drugs?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best way to do things. I mean, if we developed it, it was developed for racist reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the best way to classify drugs.
No, it's definitely not. And I didn't know that particularly. I could have guessed that and told you that it seemed like it was the case. I don't know the actual like hard data on how it was that way, but I know that it's really stupid. It doesn't make it makes no sense.
Exactly. So to put cannabis
never
just
made
on
any
another
sense.
level of the same stupid system that was broken from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean that
It's idiotic.
it was the way that things are scheduled is because it's their chance for abuse. That's what it's based on,
Right.
their chance for abuse. And like obviously cannabis has no chance for abuse, especially when it's next to a drug like heroin, as a schedule, and it's like this is challenging, man. This is challenging that we think this way and that we're not able to kind of get ourselves out of it, and we think they can only be this way.
I mean, I think that if I was going to do it myself, I would just deschedule cannabis for sure. And I think about like all the things that are not approved by the FDA and on the schedule list. Like, if you look at like Vitamin Shop, there's like 1 million substances you can buy to ingest that are not approved by the FDA and are not scheduled. From like powdered rhino horn and, ginkgo biloba, there's 1 million things like that. And I think that would just kick the can a little bit because you're not changing a lot of other stuff. But it would be, I think the cannabis thing right now is an acute issue that maybe should be addressed sooner than later. And you can address the entire scheduling system. It would take much longer. If they had to redo the entire system, it would take years and years and years. And we don't want to wait for that for cannabis. So pull cannabis off, then do the reschedule. And you're going to have to reschedule a lot of stuff now. You should just do now, like acid and mushrooms and ketamine.
And
all that
ibogaine.
stuff. Yeah, all that stuff's going to have to be rescheduled sooner. It's going to go through the same exact thing. like in 2 years, are they going to be like, oh, now magic mushrooms are Schedule 4 now? Like, they're just going to be moving that stuff around. So, like, maybe it's time to revamp the entire system.
Yeah, I think that they try to make it seem like it's super complex and that we'd be incapable of doing something like this because it's involved in so many systems. And like with my background, like I know that it's involved in a lot of systems with DEA and FDA, and the scheduling is like a thing, and it would create change. But like change can be really good, and federally decriminalizing, making federally legalizing both cannabis, psilocybin, LSD. I think that those are things that need to be done.
Right.
And then we can kind of figure it out from there. Like it should be industries that are created on their own. Like I especially with like psilocybin, I don't know how you feel about this, but like this is something that needs to be even more controlled by the communities, and the people who, I want there to be a place where someone like my dad, who's not going to go to a traditional healer's house and might do some mushrooms with them. I want a place for my dad to go into an office where he can have a mushroom or an MDMA experience and heal from some trauma. I think that that's really great too. But it just takes so long for some of these things to happen, some of these deschedulings and legalizations, and it's really stupid. And it's really because we know corporate interests, this stuff takes a long time to build, and they want to control all of it. They want to have, people know that there's a moneymaker here and it can make money. And it's really challenging now, guys. Like in cannabis, like every single operator is struggling to, if you're in debt, right now as a cannabis company, you're in a really bad place. You're going to struggle to get out of it. If you're a person who's not in debt and you're just trying to, sail the ships and trying to figure it out and last, then sure, you can be okay. But it's just getting so much harder for these independent places to operate. It's hard for a lot of these, for these multi-state operators to operate as well.
Right. Yeah. Those guys are really doing shitty, are backed by just tons and tons of money and expansion.
Yeah.
Like endless expansion.
Yeah. Endless expansion, getting into more states, just more, more brand name. And like, it's just, and you have that.
I think a lot of their stuff too is I'm not going to point any fingers directly because I don't really have any evidence of that stuff, but I think that a lot of those guys' business plans are about manipulating their stock numbers, in the same way that crypto works, or things like that, where it's you pump it up as much as possible within the community, and you can build or whatever. And I think a lot of those, because they're not competing in real ways, They're
with each other, you're saying?
Yeah, they're not really competing with each other. Like they'll be a market with like 10 people in it, and they all have the same prices. Then they're not really, actually compete. They're price fixing kind of.
Yeah,
in certain places.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of like operators, and the other day, and like some of the retailers are getting whacked because like a lot of the places who are vertically integrated, they're able to, to do what they want with their prices and kind of manipulate them a little bit. But then you have these other places that maybe aren't vertically integrated. They're just a retailer. And it kind of comes down to like, you have 7 or 8 people in a place, and one of them's holding the limit, and, they're holding the line for that price, and which can be a good thing for an industry. You do kind of want trade associations and stuff. So if businesses aren't getting too taken advantage of, and that shouldn't be the case, but that's because we've overregulated everything. So we need to create a system where people can, they can, that's the whole thing. Is like, then it's going to be really awful for the cannabis companies, every single one of them. A lot of the ones independently owned, if you don't have resources, if you're not out of debt, it's going to get really ugly in the next couple of years, I think. And that sucks. That's shitty because it probably doesn't need to be that way. And it's going to create an environment where there's just, all these, solely owned, places, maybe some retail shops that might be able to last or so, but like mostly just the vertically integrated places that have a lot of resources and a lot of backing that will continue to exist.
I mean, also you have stuff like in California where the taxes are so high that otherwise completely legit operators are tempted to sell out the back door and do shit like that because to make up for their tremendous tax burden.
The operators,
yeah. They end up paying the cost, and consumers end up paying the taxes a lot too, because you end up with these crazy sales taxes. I'm always like, look, this is a new business, right? A new industry, and you're loading it up with taxes to the consumer, which normally, if it was a different industry, you'd call it a sin tax. And sin taxes are created to slow sales, and here you have a bunch of things that you're calling an excise tax or just like cannabis tax, whatever. They're sin taxes. These are sin taxes. This is stigma in action. These heavy, heavy taxes.
Yeah.
They do it because cannabis is bad. You can pay extra money for bad stuff. It's a sin tax. It's like when they put tax on soda here in Philly.
Yeah.
That was a sin tax.
Yeah, it's about continuously switching in education that cannabis is not bad. It's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's like, and I don't get how people don't see that yet, man. Like, in Philly, I'm sure the data is pretty clear. Like, since it became legal, since there became a market for it, their drunk driving deaths went down. Like all this data is really clear, like across the country. And I don't know how they don't pay attention to it. They don't see it necessarily. And, it makes
I think the people who need to see it don't see it, and sometimes don't want to see it.
Yeah. They just, into their stigma in the back of their brain, even if you tell them, even if you give them these clear facts, they're still not able to put forward and say, okay, this is the actual case. Like, that this is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is being, someone's being manipulated. This is happening, or whatever. They can't oversee that because their stigma in the back of their head says cannabis is bad and these people are bad. So, there's no way that alcohol, which I've been drinking my whole life, is a bad thing.
Exactly. And that's why, again, one of the goals of my strip is to, take away that stigma and speak as I'm in a position, I feel like, where I can speak very openly about my own use and about cannabis in general. But not everybody's like in a position like that even.
They're not. They're
really not.
You've created a job for yourself where you can do this. It is your job, and it's part of it. You can make money off doing this. I know there's other people who I've wanted to talk to who are in advocating positions, and they've told me that they can't come on the show. They can't do this.
I mean, no doubt though. I have been doing this type of stuff has limited who I can work with, for sure. There are comics has a lot of publishers and places that publish for children, and so that's that stigma has certainly affected my career in that way.
Yeah. Do you think that a publisher who does publish for children should be able to publish a cannabis book?
Definitely.
Do they publish alcohol books?
So there's publishers that publish comics that will be like for all ages, but then have a kids like imprint, and they'll have comics for adults and comics for children. And yes, sometimes there's alcohol comics and comics about murder. And
okay, then there should be no difference then.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So I just thought that
like a movie. It would be like Disney, right? Like they produce films for adults and they produce films for children, and they it's part of making content. Comics just has this people that get the idea that it's all for children because of the nature of the medium, but we try to show, and we show time and time again, that it's also for adults. Like I have no children read my comic.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Your comic's definitely not for kids.
Yeah, like even if some teenager was like, "Oh, cool, a comic about weed," they'd get bored by it. I think almost immediately.
Dude. Exactly. They'd be like, "Wait, what's going on?" About? They'd read like a couple of them, and be like, "This is so cool," and then be like, "Oh, wait a second, we're talking about like regulation and like." What's Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So currently you do have, you have a Kickstarter to help you get the comic and take some of the selected works and to put them into a hardcover book that you're going to be hopefully selling at different independent dispensaries across the country, and of course, marketing through the publisher that you're doing it with. And you want to just speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's so this is actually, I'm publishing it myself. And so the Kickstarter is really important because it'll help cover the printing of the book and shipping costs. There's also a bunch of really cool like rewards you can get. I have some cool T-shirts making fun of corporate mids. and also sticker packs, stuff like that. Yeah, there's definitely I created a countertop cardboard display for stores because I know like a lot of cannabis stores don't necessarily sell books, so they don't necessarily have shelf space or whatever available for books. So I had this countertop display. I will also say to stores that I've had many people that read the comic come up to me and tell me they stopped buying corporate weed from reading the comic. So I think for an independent dispensary, it might be a good thing for your customers in that way.
For sure. I'll definitely definitely tell my guys around here for sure.
Yeah. And so yeah, the Kickstarter has another week left. Still have about $8,000 to raise over the next week. So anything you could throw in would be great, or just spread the word would be amazing. And hopefully this time next week we're celebrating the full being fully funded, and hopefully soon, a month or two, get those books out to the world.
That sounds that sounds really amazing. I'm definitely going to be purchasing one of those books and definitely be supporting you in any way that I can. I don't know if this episode will get out before the week is over. We definitely will try to do that. And that will be the goal. I know Michael and I were talking about it and trying to figure that out. I didn't know it was exactly 1 week left, but we can, we'll definitely, if not, we'll definitely get some clips out there and definitely promote you and say, let people know about what's going on and let them follow up with this. Cause dude, I think it's so important what you're doing. And just having a place where people can go and have this conversation. Before, I don't know if it really existed for the layperson, the person who wasn't, plugged in super. But now somebody can just go on social media. They can go on Instagram and they can become a part of this conversation. They can then take this conversation to their community, to their town halls. And I think that's like super important. Where for, most people, listening likely know your tag. But for those who don't know, where can people find you?
I am Box Brown. And you'll find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, and also the Legalization Nation Patreon. You can check out, and you get on the Patreon, you get the comic strips a little bit early, and if you get $5 a month, you get this cool VIP membership card.
Heck yeah, I love it. Now, what will so that it'll be about, if everything goes well, it'll be 2 months until the book comes out.
I'd say about that. I'd said early 24.
Okay.
Because you never know what could happen. Like, this stuff gets shipped over from Asia, and so like when there could be a giant boat or something stuck in the Suez Canal that would delay it, or who knows?
Tons of different things.
But yeah, exactly. So yeah, just in case, I said early 24.
What now, one of my last questions here. What and if you can share it, that's great. If not, no. But where does box come from?
So it was a nickname that I got in college because this dude told me that I looked like a shoebox, and so my friends started calling me Box for whatever, and then it became my AOL Instant Messenger name.
Oh, cool.
And then I started using it for like all my online stuff. And so when I started making comics, I just used that because that was my username on like LiveJournal, where I was posting my comics.
So it just grew from that.
Yeah, it just became that. Interesting though, every time someone asks me about this, I tell them to check out there's another Box Brown named Henry Box Brown, who was a famous person from history who was a slave, and he mailed himself to the North and survived.
Badass motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Henry Box Brown.
Henry Box Brown, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna check it out. That seems so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I don't think that you look like a shoebox.
Like, I was pretty fucked up. It was
No.
like the first day of college.
Oh, so it's just someone
First day
just
of
being
school.
like, you know, probably it's like LSD, like, oh, that guy, he's a shoebox. And then like,
Yeah, kinda.
hell yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so cool. I love when things happen. That's how it has to happen. It has to happen organically like that.
Really stupid, but it's just like stuck.
Dude, I love it. I love it. I was so so excited to to have you on the show today. I think it's been an awesome conversation. I would love to do it again. If there's definitely stuff that we didn't touch on today, and as we kind of go through this process, it's going to continuously grow, and I would love to have you back on the show. So let's definitely plan to do that in the future.
Sure, anytime.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, is there anything else that you have left? Oh, I do have one more question. Who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
Bret the Hitman Hart.
That's a great choice. And I would love to, I'd love to almost like do a whole episode about, wrestling and talking about that sometime with you,
Oh, anything. I'll talk about wrestling anytime.
Okay, we're gonna get into it, guys. And next we're gonna.
If it's Hitman Hart, you gotta talk about the screw job next time. We gotta talk about it.
Let's do it.
With Shawn Michaels.
Yep.
Oh, you better believe it, because I do love the sexy boy. I love degeneration.
Even as a Hitman Hart fan, I still love Shawn Michaels.
How could you not, dude? Those are my original guys. I loved badass Billy Gunn. That was another one of my guys. I love the Guerreros.
Yeah,
Eddie Guerrero. Yeah, dude. Hell yeah, you still wrestling?
Yeah.
Oh, giddy up, baby. That's awesome. What about is the Road Dogg Jesse James?
Road Dogg is like behind the scenes guy in WWE.
Okay, cool. So he's still crushing it. I love that. I think I got in trouble for doing the suck it, in school like 100
Like
times.
every kid in the 90s.
Yeah, every kid in the 90s. Exactly. But let's definitely do an episode about that. It was so amazing. And of course, Stone Cold. That's probably. Of course, it's hard to get away from him. The glass breaks and the hair on my arm still stands up.
Yeah.
Let's go. But man, it was so awesome to have you on the show today. What you're doing for cannabis, what you're doing for weed is so important. I can't wait to stay connected from you. Dr. BeeWell is going to help you in any way that he can, any way that we can. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being a cool ass dude. I had an awesome time today. I look forward to doing it in the future.
Hey, thanks so much.
Giddy up, brother. We'll talk to you later.
All right, take it easy.
Be well.